Bismillah, walhamdulillah, as-salatu was-salam ala rasulina wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. So today we're going to be looking at our fourth lesson of the Fiqh of Da'wah course. Obviously our main goal here is to learn how to invite people to Islam. We're mainly catering towards Christians, Jews, and atheists, but some of the techniques that we'll be discussing are more universal to be able to invite people from all different faiths to Islam. And we also, based on the last lesson that we talked about, we're also going to discuss Deen and Nasiha. Because da'wah is not just to invite people to Islam, but also to help Muslims become better Muslims. That is part of the full spectrum of da'wah. And so today we're going to talk about 4 more slides about Deen and Nasiha. So that's mainly sincere advice from Muslims to be more righteous, to have more taqwa and birr. And then we're going to look at the 10 major ulum ad-din of Islam, and major books and resources to help build up your general knowledge of Islam, because I want you guys to be very well-rounded du'at. So I want you to have a background in seerah, a background in Arabi, of hadith, of fiqh, of tafsir, of da'wah, of knowing different fiqh websites that you can use, about knowing about different websites that specifically deal with biblical criticisms and how to deal with very tricky questions that come up in debates. So I want you to know all of this stuff so that way you feel very confident overall when you're actually discussing. And also, you don't need to feel that you have to answer everybody's question on the spot. Some people, they make this mistake. They think that they have to come up with something. You don't have to make something up if you don't understand something. Imam Malik, one time he was asked 40 questions from a person who came from outside of Medina, and to which 36 of them he said, La idri, I don't know. So, and he was the greatest Imam of Medina. To the extent that some of the other ulama said, no one is allowed to give fatwa except for Imam Malik while he was alive. So that just goes to show his great caliber and his great status and his aql, his rationale. But even though, it doesn't mean you have to answer every question. However, with the resources that we will be looking at today, inshallah, 99% of the time you can say to the person very comfortably, you can say, you know what? Let me just take down your name, your number, your email. It's a very good question that you have. I do have some resources that I can look at to get that specific answer, and I will get back to you, inshallah. And that's all you need to say. And then you've already set things up. And then obviously, if you know some of the mashaykh in the city, that can also be helpful. We're also going to mention some of the major du'at that are famous in the world right now, who can not only answer these questions, have a bunch of videos and tutorials and live examples of how they deal with these more trickier questions. So that's the idea for today. So regarding ad-din al-nasiha, one more hadith, عن علي ibn Abi Hussein, meaning that the Ali ibn Abi Hussein made from the Prophet ﷺ, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إن من حسن إسلام مرء تركه ما لا يعنيه. So basically that Ali ibn Abi Talib, his son Hussein, from his 2 major sons, Al-Hasan and Hussein, radiallahu anhu, that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said that verily among the excellence in Islam is for a man to leave that which does not concern him. The hadith is considered sahih li ghayrihi, which means based on many hasan hadith, if you combine them together, it has the strength of a sahih hadith. This is not an usul hadith course, but if you ever see me use the terms sahih li dhatihi versus sahih li ghayrihi, or hasan li dhatihi versus hasan li ghayrihi, li dhatihi means that is the true grading of the hadith. Li ghayrihi is if it's one grade below, but you have multiple evidences, it elevates one status higher. So for example, a hasan li ghayrihi hadith is multiple weak hadith. A sahih li ghayrihi hadith is multiple hasan hadith. A hasan li dhatihi hadith is hasan in and of itself, and a sahih li dhatihi hadith is sahih in and of itself. And I know I said I wasn't going to make this into a usul hadith course, but a little bit more detail, just know that a sahih hadith has at least one authentic chain that is muttasil, that everybody in the chain is connected, everybody in the chain is dabat, they have sound memory of the exact wording of the hadith, and they're all thiqah, they're all reliable, and they're not known to commit any open fisq, transgression, and all their memory is still preserved at the time where the hadith is being collected. That's for sahih hadith. A hasan hadith, the main difference is the gist of the wording is correct, the ma'na is correct, but the lafzi, the exact wording, the lettering exactly is a little bit off. But everybody in the chain is thiqah. And normally for a weak hadith, it's that there's one person, normally that's majhul, that's unknown. Or the hadith is munqata'. There's a break in the hadith where there's a missing rawi. This is the main reason for the hadith being weak. But it's not fabricated because it hasn't been proven to be false. And we say that for a false hadith, we call it hadith mawdu'. I know mawdu', like in everyday Arabic, means like the subject matter. But in the case of hadith, it means a fabricated hadith. So we never use fabricated hadith. Da'if hadith are only used normally for manners, and especially when they're assisted by stronger hadith. And then when it comes to Hasan and Sahih hadith, we use them as evidence. It's important to know this because if you're giving da'wah to people, they might bring up a very weak hadith or a fabricated hadith, and then you just tell them, like, this is not something we have a discourse about because we don't use this as evidence. And the scholars will also tell you if the hadith is da'if jiddan, very weak, it's not used at all. So there's a difference actually between da'if and da'if jiddan, weak and very weak. So if you have debates with some Christians and they find you some very weak hadith or a fabricated hadith, you'd say the Muslims, we don't make use of these ahadith, so there's no reason to have a discussion about this. It would be kind of like if all the Christian scholars agreed that this narration of Isa alayhi salam is way too weak to be used, so then why would you use it? Just to basically avoid going down the rabbit hole of using certain weak ahadith. Also, we need to remember there's a difference between a qawl, a statement from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and an athar or a qawl from a sahabi. Sahabi in most of the case, if he's not saying sami'tu Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if he's not saying I heard from the Messenger of Allah, or he's not directly saying that he saw the Prophet sallallahu do something, then he's mostly likely giving his own ijtihad, his own ra'i. So the ra'i of a sahabi is not wahi. So it cannot be held to the same degree. So sometimes you might even find a tafsir from Abdullah ibn Abbas, who is the greatest mufassir of all the sahaba. He's somebody that the Prophet made dua for. And the sahaba were well aware of his ability. But if for some reason there was like one opinion of him in all his tafsir that's a little bit confusing, or maybe it's kind of difficult to substantiate, you have to realize that Abdullah ibn Abbas is a mujtahid, he's a mufassir, he is a scholar in his own right, he can make ijtihad in fiqh and he can give tafsir, but he's not infallible, he's not ma'soom. And if he's giving his own ta'wil, his own interpretation, it's something that's open for debate. It's something that's open for discussion in the sense that, not that you need to debate this with Christians, but you tell them that this is not at the grade of evidence of wahi. So Abdullah ibn Abbas is a companion. It's like a disciple of Isa alayhi salam. He could be right or he could be wrong. So you don't have to have an argument based on the opinion of a sahabi. That's why I'm mentioning that. So, and then in the book of Sunan al-Tirmidhi, it was mentioned that Abu Darda radiallahu anhu reported that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, whoever protects the honor of his brother, Allah will protect his face from the fire on the day of resurrection. So many times in our times, people get bored. They think that a good topic of discussion to have over a shawarma for afternoon meal is what's so-and-so doing, and getting into all the juicy gossip topics about what that person's doing. Not realizing that not only is backbiting a major sin, both ghiba and namima. Ghiba is when you say something that's true about your brother. Namima is when you actually invent a lie about your brother. And either way, they would have disliked you to say it. They're both major sins. But normally, when there's a major sin in Islam, if you avoid it, there's a major reward. We have to remember to tell people that sometimes. So if you protect the honor of your brother or your sister in Islam, then Allah will protect your face from the fire on the day of judgment. So you understand that you are being honored by Allah by you honoring your brother. I don't want to call this karma, but basically everybody's going to get what good deeds they put forth in a sense. We still have to rely on the mercy of Allah, but your deeds matter. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu said that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, do you know what is backbiting? And then the Sahaba said, Allah and His Messenger know better. Thereupon he said, backbiting is talking about your Muslim brother in a manner which he dislikes. It was said to him, what if my Muslim brother is as I say? He said, if he is actually as you say, then that is backbiting. But if that is not him, that is slandering, namima. Hadith is in Sahih Muslim, and in general, the ahadith in Bukhari and Muslim are generally considered authentic. There are 80 ahadith which have been contested in the book of Imam Bukhari's Sahih al-Bukhari, 80 that were challenged. However, Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, a famous Shafi'i scholar, actually defended all 80 of these ahadith. Some of these 80 ahadith, they have been sort of branded as mu'allaq hadith, hanging hadith, where there is an apparent missing person in the chain. However, Ibn Hajar showed that through other riwayat, all these chains of narration are actually authentic and fully connected. So this is a bit of an advanced side topic, but just because these books we use a lot when we discuss in Islam. We're giving advice to Muslims and to invite non-Muslims to Islam. So Bukhari and Muslim, Bukhari has 80 hadith with a question mark, but those 80 hadith have been challenged by some to still be fully authentic. And then for Sahih Muslim, the number is a little bit higher. I think it's around 120 or 180. But the general stamp of approval is that Bukhari and Muslim are generally considered super authentic books. The next 4 books, Abu Dawood, An-Nasa'i, Ibn Majah, and At-Tirmidhi, there's a lot more weak ahadith. And if you guys are discussing a lot with either Muslims or non-Muslims, you want to use the resource sunnah.com or an equivalent website where they give you the hadith grading. So you know if it's worth using this as an evidence or not. This is the hadith about the hanging papers. Might not show fully the title from the projector. This is a very amazing hadith, which the scholars differ on its authenticity. Imam Hakim, he graded this as actually being a sahih hadith. He relates it in Al-Mustadrak. Al-Mustadrak is a famous hadith book which tries to find all the authentic ahadith that are not already found in the Sahihain, meaning the 2 Sahihs of Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. So this is a very motivational hadith, and this is why I want to share it with you guys. Some scholars said this hadith was just Hasan. Obviously, Imam Hakim thought it was Sahih. So why is this important? Because it's going to talk to us about which type of Muslims are those with the highest iman, which we should all aspire to have. It was narrated by Al-Hakim and Al-Mustadrak on the authority of Umar radiallahu anhu that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Do you know whom amongst the believers have the best iman, the best faith?" He replied, "The angels, O Messenger of Allah." The reply came, "They are so, and they have the right to be so. For what stops them when Allah has given them such a status that He has given them? But it is other than them." He then said, "Then it is the prophets from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who has honored with prophethood and the message." The reply came, "They are so, and they have the right to be so. For what stops them when Allah has given them such a status? But it is other than them. Then who are they, O Messenger of Allah?" The answer came, "They are aqwam, groups of people that come after me in loins of men," meaning they have not been born yet. "So they believe in me, even though they have never seen me. And they find the hanging papers. So they work according to what is in it. They are the best of believers in Iman." What does this mean? The hanging papers, according to the Mufassirin of Hadith, is those who revive the Quran and Sunnah. When you come to a time where people are not ruling by the Sharia fully, which is the time we're already living in. Even in some Muslim countries, Islam is not being fully implemented. So those who revive the deen of Allah, they are the people who are the best of Iman. So this is part of da'wah, reviving Islam, having the manhaj of a mujaddid, of a reviver. So when we try to revive the deen of Allah, inshallah we become those with the best of Iman alongside the Anbiya alayhi salatu wasalam, and alongside the Malaika. Because the Prophet ﷺ said that they're also of this status. But if you want to have the Iman like the Anbiya alayhi salatu wasalam, the Prophets and the Malaika, then be among those who revive the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then there's a famous ayah in Surah Ali Imran, وَتَكُمْ مِنْكُمْ أُمَّةٌ يَدْعُونَ إِلَى الْخَيْرِ وَيَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. That in English means, let there arise out of you a group of people inviting to all that is good, enjoining al-ma'ruf. Al-ma'ruf linguistically, lughatan, means what is commonly known to be good. But in this context, what Islam specifically defines as good. And they forbid al-munkar, meaning evil actions. Whatever Islam says is a sin. So, for example, polytheism, worshipping gods other than Allah, and other major sins in Islam. Those who do this type of da'wah, they do amr bil ma'ruf wa nahy anil munkar, those who command towards good and forbid evil actions, أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. They are the successful people. So this is da'wah. And some people, and I realize that, SubhanAllah, may Allah help our brothers and sisters in Palestine, but as well as all the Muslim countries where there's a lot of dhulm, a lot of oppression. We have to remember, as much as we should be making dua, and as helpful as it is, normally speaking, to give donations, even though in some cases they might actually get blocked by the oppressors at some checkpoints. And obviously the Muslim armies, if they were to just unite together, they could easily squash most of the oppressors. We have to also remember another part of this equation, which is that actually if we don't do our part to command the good and forbid the evil, Allah might not even accept our dua. And I have not yet heard one imam mention this on a minbar for the last 5 years, from all the dhulamat, all the oppression that we've been seeing in the Muslim world. So consider this hadith. Doing da'wah can avert the punishment of Allah. Not only that, it can make your dua be accepted. By Allah, in whose hands is my soul, you will enjoin the good, you will command the ma'roof and forbid the munkar, the evil, or else Allah will send soon upon you a punishment from Him, then you will call upon Him and He will not answer you. Could it be the reason why our brothers and sisters in Palestine, the reason why they're suffering, could it actually be maybe because of us? Could it be because of our sins? Could it be because we're not commanding towards the haqq of Islam? Could it be because we're not unified as a Muslim ummah and we have unfortunately a lot of munafiqeen that are trying to rule by other than Islam? Could that be the reason? Because if that is, then we need to start doing some da'wah in this regards as well. And this is a very famous ayah that you'll hear many of the khatibs mention on the minbar, which is where Allah tells us in Surah Al-Ra'd, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. That indeed Allah will not change the condition of a people until they change what is in themselves. Why is that important? 2 reasons. One, as we can see from the hadith even above it, you need to take action in general for even your dua to be accepted and for Allah to be pleased with you. And basically, if you really want full support from Allah, you need to make sure you're doing everything you can correctly, including not staying silent when it comes to the injustice of the world. This ayah here in Surah Al-Ra'd, it's normally used to tell people about things like, make sure you pray in a straight line and make sure your shoes are on the racks properly. And it's focused only on basically your own individual habits most of the time. What you have to understand is that this can be understood both individually and holistically and collectively. If we as an ummah want basically the support of Allah, then the ummah should change. If there's a common problem, especially if it's a major problem, then we should all be trying to fix it holistically. So now we get to the major ulum ad-din, the major Islamic sciences. So these are just some very useful resources that are available, mainly in English, but some of them have the Arabic built into the same apps. And I'm actually really shocked at how many people don't know about these different apps and different books and resources. One of the biggest ones, I think, for anybody who hasn't learned the word-for-word meaning of the Quran, is just once in your life at least, or if not, make it a habit to try either recitequran.com, which requires no downloads. You just go onto the internet and you don't have to download anything. You can put it into tajweed mode. You can put word for word mode. You can see the entire meaning of every word of the Quran, and you can click on the tafsir of every ayah of the Quran and get the full detailed meaning of Tafsir Ibn Kathir and 2 other major tafsir that have been translated into English. Tadhkir al-Quran and Ma'rif al-Quran are the other 2 major tafsir. So all this is available in English and in Arabic and without a download. And so when we started playing this, for example, at the elementary school that I work at, all the kids all of a sudden actually understand what the Quran is saying. And even if you just passively use the word for word mode and read the Quran one time, you'll probably recall 50% of the words, because a lot of the words in the Quran are repetitive. There's a lot of similar words that keep being used over and over again. That's one of the reasons why it becomes easier to comprehend the Quran compared to other Arabic script. Sunnah.com, we mentioned already a little bit earlier. When we want to find out the takhrij or the hukam of basically the grading of a hadith, then we need to have a good source. So sunnah.com is really nice because it gives you the English and Arabic side by side. For any hadith from the Sunnah and Sittah, so Bukhari, Muslim, Abu Dawud, Nasa'i, Ibn Majah, Tirmidhi, as well as some of the other famous books like Musnad Ahmad ibn Hanbal, Imam Malik's Muwatta. You also have, for example, Riyadh al-Salihin, Arba'in al-Nawawi, and some other collections as well. About 16 or 17 hadith collections in a searchable database. You just have to type in the keywords in English or Arabic, the ahadith will populate, and then you can take the English or the Arabic and you can also share them through email and social media or put them into a Word document. So very good for research and da'wah purposes. The next one is usul al-fiqh. So usul al-fiqh is important because we need to understand the lens or the perspective of how the mujtahideen, the scholars of ijtihad, how they do istinbat fil hukm shar'i, how they extract Islamic rulings. If you don't know this stuff, you might make some very simple but serious blunders or mistakes while giving da'wah. So for example, you should know the difference between an ayah that's am and khas, one that's general and one that's specific, and how the scholars tell you that a specific hadith or a specific ayah, that takes prevalence in priority over a general evidence. You should know about concepts like nasikh and mansukh. For example, a born Muslim might come to you and say, oh, the Quran says, don't come to the prayer drunk. So that means that as long as you're not praying, you can drink alcohol, according to their misunderstanding. So this is the issue of nasikh and mansukh, that there are abrogated and abrogating ayat, which means that even though the whole Quran is complete, some ayat, the hukm of a specific ayah can be overruled by a later ayah that would be revealed. So we need to understand this concept even. And so if somebody was to say, oh, why is this ayah in the Quran? Well, if you understand nasikh and mansukh, it's very easy to understand the difference. And then especially for somebody who's either just becoming practicing, or for example, especially for somebody who's not Muslim, if they don't understand this concept, then you might find yourself being confused, which you don't want. So that's why I highly recommend that you study a base primer, a base matan, a base text in usul al-fiqh. One of the most popular, without a doubt, is Matan al-Waraqat by Imam Juwayni, who was one of the famous teachers of Imam al-Ghazali, who was one of the early Shafi'i scholars who wrote a major book on usul al-fiqh. There is a full course available of this, technically recorded on LMM, London Muslim Mosque, and then Raja already taught, but he's also reteaching it this semester. So if you have an opportunity, you might want to either join the class late or maybe take it as a self-study online course, or wait till it's available at a live setting. Usul al-Hadith. I'm not saying you guys have to be experts in hadith, but just to understand the basics, understand how hadith are derived, which books are the most authentic, how would you be able to determine not only if a hadith was authentic or not, which hadith could be used in tashri', in legislation or not. Because all of this can play a role in the da'wah. If you don't know these subtleties, you might be arguing about a hadith that the scholars don't even use. So it's very important to understand that. So a major work of that is Nukhbatul Fiqh. This is a famous book by the very famous Shafi'i scholar and Muhaddith Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani. Most people that I've seen teach this in English. They usually try to draw basically an English curriculum from this text. And it also has multiple shuruh, both in English and Arabic. So multiple commentaries in English and Arabic on this famous text. And then base and comparative fiqh. You need to understand this for a couple reasons. One is you need to understand in your deen what the arkan are. And I don't just mean like the arkan of Islam. Like I'm not just talking about like shahada, salah, sawm, zakat, and hajj. The arkan to know that your salah is even valid. The arkan to know that your wudu is valid. Or your bay'ah, your business transactions, or any contracts that you make. You need to know what's considered basically the minimum and the optimal standard of any act of worship and of any business transaction. You should know that, at least according to one madhab. Because otherwise, you're going to get confused and you might argue with other people for hours, and basically you might be arguing for the wrong reasons. I would highly prefer, or I would recommend at least, although it's not wajib by any means, to study comparative fiqh. Because if you do get into discussions or debates about, For example, if I'm doing wudu, do I have to do masah on just wiping a part of my hair, 1/4, the full hair? If you are going to have those discussions, then you need to have the time and the intellectual humility to study the differences of opinion. Otherwise, you have to keep your mouth closed. It's helpful to know these things because sometimes Muslims spend too much energy arguing with each other on these issues. There is a gentle and respectable way of saying, inshallah, maybe according to this scholar, this opinion seems to be the rajih, seems to be stronger, and you present their evidences after you've already studied the views of the different scholars, and you avoid this confusion. And also in some cases, when it comes to dealing with non-Muslims, they may find, for example, an opinion that only one madhab holds, and they might get really sensitive about it. So for example, the issue of dogs. We know that 3 out of the 4 madhab, they think that the saliva is najis. And this is a really sensitive issue for a lot of Canadians and a lot of Europeans and a lot of Americans. They were grown up to be taught that a dog is a man's best friend. And so when you tell them that 3 of the 4 madhab, or you only tell them that one of those 3 of the 4 madhab say that the dog's saliva is najis, that could potentially scare somebody away from Islam. There might be a convert who accepts Islam and he's living in a house where there's a dog and he has to run from the dog 24/7 in the house because the dog is trying to lick everything. So what do? And if you took the time to study Fiqh al-Muqarana, you would understand that maybe that minority opinion is actually a very strong opinion. Because for example, in Surah Al-Ma'idah, it talks about how you can use hunting dogs to catch food for you, and then you eat from what they catch. If you're going to eat something which a dog bit, and there's no mention of washing, a special procedure for these hunting dogs. So if you can eat what the dog sunk his saliva into, is it really impure? And then also the hadith that talks about if a dog licks a vessel, then wash it 1 time with dirt and 6 times with water. Imam Malik and the Malikiyya in general, they would argue, this is actually a proof that it's not talking about najasa. Because if it was najasa, when you remove the najis aini, which is the main visible substance of najasa, then the scholars will tell you in general, if you can, with 1 wash away all the urine from your hand, for example, then it's clean. There's no mention of having to do it 2 or 3 or 5 or 7 times. So there must be a reason why 7. And the Malikiyya have argued this. Ibn Rushd al-Maliki argued in Bidayat al-Mujtahid that this is actually about the issue of rabies, because also we have ahadith that mention that there was a temporary killing of dogs in the Sunnah literature, but it was only temporary. So then those barbarians out there, not barbarians, those non-Muslims who think that we're trying to be barbaric by saying, oh look, there's a hadith that says kill all the dogs. Hold on a second here. There's more to the story. There's a hadith that says that to kill every basically voracious dog or every vicious dog. And the vicious dog is not the average dog. We know that during those times, as well as during our times, maybe to a smaller extent, but in China, it wasn't that long ago, in the last 50 years, there was a major rabies outbreak. So when the rabies spread it normally spreads very easily through rodents, but it can also spread through dogs, especially wild dogs. So dogs that you're not familiar with, dogs that are roaming in the streets, they're going through garbage bins and they're biting the carcasses of random dead animals on the ground, they're very likely to get infected. So there must have been, or it's very highly likely, that there was a widespread pandemic or epidemic where there was rabid dogs, and hence why there's another hadith that says that this hadith was abrogated. Back to the concept of nasikh wal mansukh. So we know there was a temporary allowance for the killing of dogs. Another hadith mentions the vicious dog. We know that dogs that have rabies become vicious. They will start attacking people. They act very abnormal. And we also know that their saliva carries rabies. And if you were to wash a plate thoroughly with either 2 options, dirt and water or soap and water, you would destroy the rabies virus that could get, for example, on a plate or on a cup. But would a non-rabied, domesticated hunting dog have this problem? It wouldn't. So that's why, I know I just went on a huge tangent there, but it's just to show you that sometimes it really helps to study Fiqh al-Muqarana. It's not a requirement, but it further enrich your appreciation for Islam. It will further help to mitigate and mediate discussions that you have with both Muslims and non-Muslims when it comes to Deen and Nasiha and when it comes to Da'wah. Usul al-Aqidah. So the issue with Aqidah is there are some baseline aspects of Arkan al-Iman which no two Muslims can differ on. Which means you have to believe in amantu billahi wa kutubihi wa rasulihi wa yawm al-akhir. You have to believe in all the arkan of iman. You have to believe in Allah and His books and His messengers, and you have to believe in the day of judgment. You have to believe in the pillars of iman, but there are some issues of controversy which we don't necessarily have to fully agree upon, which is like the exact kayfiyya or the howness of the asma wa sifat. It's a classical argument between the Asha'ira, the Asharis, and the Maturidiyya, and the Athariya, or what sometimes what modern day people would call the Salafis. There's actually two kind of camps here. Early Hanbalis, who a lot of them did tafweed, and then a lot of later Hanbalis / Salafis who took the literal meaning of the Asma wa Sifat, the names and attributes of Allah, but they didn't say how to make sense of them, but they said you should take them literally. So we have all these camps, but the Prophet ﷺ, he never got into these details. So why you want to know these basics is so you know the things that every Muslim has to agree upon, and I would discourage you from actually going into the subtleties that have been debated for over a millennium, over 1,000 years. Because if the Prophet ﷺ did not encourage it, and also if the Quran, if you look at it, there's an ayat in Surah Al-An'am, and there are similar ayat that discuss the issue of, and who is worse than a person who invents a lie about Allah? So when you say Allah is this or Allah is that, and you start making ta'wil, you start making interpretation of who Allah is, if you are wrong, you are taking a very big risk here. It's one of the worst things you can do. It's already sinful for a person who doesn't have knowledge to make ijtihad on fiqh issues. And that has to do with issues of ibadat and mu'amalat. It's even more dangerous for you to say something about Allah and be incorrect. And Allah has warned us in the Quran about those who invent lies about Him. So we should be really intellectually humble when it comes to this topic. We should know there are some things that all the scholars agree upon. And if you look at these three major Aqidah schools that we talked about already, the Asharis, the Maturidis, and the Atharis / Salafis, there are some things they all agree upon. That's what we should focus on. And that's what we need to know. And especially, for example, if we deal with non-Muslims, but I would discourage not only you to debate the sideline issues, but also to even bring them up to a non-Muslim. A non-Muslim does not have to have a debate on, did Allah mean He had a real wajh or not? Like, what was the nature of this wajh? We know we will be able to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because the Prophet ﷺ said that you will be able to see Allah like you see the full moon. So we know for sure we can see Him. But there's this long debate on how are we going to see Allah? What does this mean, wajh? What does it mean, yad? Like, what do these things mean? So the safe thing to do is say we believe in it, and Allah knows best the interpretation of the meaning. If you say this, you are 100% safe, and every one of the Aqidah schools will tell you that. If you say you fully believe in it, and you don't question why or how, you're 100% safe. So just to deal with this controversy, because some people, they spend 5-10 years arguing about this. Then the issue of tazkiyah, spiritual purification. So at least try to study one major text on spirituality in Islam and purifying the heart. يعني مطهرة القلب or مطهرة القلوب, to purify the heart or the hearts. It's important because if we do any of this stuff for the wrong reasons, like if, for example, if I'm teaching you here for the wrong reasons, if it's not for the sake of Allah, and may Allah allow it to be only for the sake of Allah, and if you're not here to learn only for the sake of Allah, you could actually be not only not obtaining good deeds, if you did it just because you wanted to show off, you can actually get sin for doing an act of worship. So it's a very dangerous trap that a lot of people might fall into. Also the issue of hasad. If you spend days just wishing that, your best friend or actually somebody, let's say you know at the mosque or you know from your school or just some random person you meet in the street, if you keep wishing bad upon them and you want their na'im to be taken away from them, then you run the risk of the hadith that talks about anybody who commits hasad, just bil ma'na the hadith, anybody who commits hasad, envy, then it burns away at their good deeds like fire burns wood. So you have to understand is that it's not worth setting yourself up for failure thinking that you're actually, being righteous or trying to do something good. So let's not confuse advising people with having hasad. And then Arabi is important. There are many resources. Myself, I'm Ajami. I'm technically non-Arab. It's kind of obvious maybe for some of you guys to figure that out. If I'm not sure about what a word means, and I don't find already the translation on Quran.com or using the Green Tech app, which is like the best app for Android and Apple for a word-for-word tajweed Quran, Mus'haf with the audio meanings and tafsir built in. But if I'm not sure of a word, maybe from a hadith, or maybe I heard a scholar mention a specific word that I'm not sure of, I would highly recommend al-ma'ani.com. Al-ma'ani.com uses major dictionaries from basically like classical Arabic dictionaries, and it allows it to be available in multiple languages, English, Spanish, French, and you can see sometimes a long list, like 3-4 pages long, analysis of a word, the root etymology, the medical use of the word, the common everyday language use of the word, the Quranic usage of the word. So al-ma'ani.com is a very expansive and extensive way of looking at the meanings of words. Very important as tulab al-ilm, as students of knowledge. And then if you just want to build up your general knowledge of Arabic, al-Arabiyya bayna yadayk, Arabic between your hands, a very famous work which was developed in Egypt, which still today is one of the gold standards. Also, some people would recommend the Medina series, volumes 1, 2, 3, which is available obviously in the Saudi Arabian curriculum. Both of these resources are available to download for free off the internet. And the website, almaani.com, is also free. Sirah, I would recommend studying a book like something from Saif al-Rahman Mubarak Puri, who is the author of Rahiq al-Maktoum, the Sealed Nectar. And the slightly easier version of this book is called Wanshaq al-Qamar, When the Moon Split. To have a general idea of the Sirah, because if you're going to discuss why the Prophet ﷺ was the last and final prophet, and you want to prove this to non-Muslims, and you also want to educate Muslims of the importance of knowing about our beloved Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then you need to know his life. In addition to these books, you can also consider looking at Sheikh Adnan's new Saturday Sirah Halaqah series, which is being recorded. He's only on lesson 5, so if you want to kind of have some more supplemental knowledge, that's another thing you can consider, just listening to the recordings on YouTube about the Sirah. But also, I would recommend studying at least one book from that. Da'wah and public speaking. I'm going to just show you some quick references before the next class in the masjid starts. So, when it comes to organizations, the London Muslim Mosque has both a weekly street da'wah and they have a revert care mentorship program. So they're directly trying to invite people to Islam and to make sure they stay within the millah, within the fold of Islam. So if you ever want to get more serious from a practical perspective, not just having the ilm, the knowledge, but also the amal, the actions, then this is a good venue for you to consider. This is obviously local. It's on, 151 Oxford Street West. So super close to here, the London Muslim Mosque. Ayera workshops are sometimes hosted at the London Muslim Mosque. They are presenting some of the information that I have. I also have some stuff that's not the same as theirs. But if you ever want a kind of a weekend intensive workshop, Ayera does some very good work with that. And they do come to London to do those weekend workshops. And then the Muslim Wellness Network, the Fiqh of Da'wah course, which you're all in right now. We're trying to study as much as we can within one semester. So basically within a 3 to 4 month period on this science. So this will definitely help to set you up for being a good da'i. And then also I3 Institute has a 10-month Islamic Studies and Leadership course, which is heavily da'wah centered. That is yet another option, which is a free option that you can take. And if you want to expand your knowledge on the Ulumuddin in general, I was mentioning this before the class started, Islamic Online University and Seekers Hub. Those are two, I wanted to say they were both free. Seekers Hub is still free. The next two, Islamic Online University and Sapiens Institute, there's mostly paid courses, but these are some other online courses that you can take from these institutes. I would discuss some more, but I don't know if they're going to let me. Maybe I'll talk for 2 more minutes until somebody tells me it's too much time. So, way da'wah can start in your personal life. So there's lots of options, not just street da'wah. You can start your own halaqat, study circles, book clubs, work with these different da'wah organizations that I mentioned, make your own da'wah organization, build new affiliations and groups within masajid and Islamic institutions, Islamic schools. Obviously, street da'wah is an option with books and pamphlets. You can also do a lot of stuff online, YouTube, Instagram, WhatsApp, basically whatever social media apps that are useful for engaging with both helping Muslims and non-Muslims to be better Muslims, then you can use that. And obviously just casual discussions over coffee, tea, inviting people to your house, building friendships, that would obviously help, and other mentorship programs. I'll just quickly sum up with just some of these key names of some of the du'at. So if you don't know these names, even for those who are in the back here, because I know you guys have an Arabic class, if you guys want to really know how to do Islam well, and you don't have the time to take this class, take the time to go on YouTube and search these people up. Honestly, if you just spend, 10, 20 hours, you're going to learn probably all the core essentials. But there's always going to be room for improvement. But guys like Sheikh Uthman Farouk, he does like weekly street dawah to my knowledge, with weekly people converting to Islam. He's based in the United States of America. He's also a Hanbali scholar and has a lot of really good resources. And you'll see a lot of his online debates on converting atheists and Christians and Jews to Islam. Ahmed Deedat was like the major pioneer in the last century of doing dawah in English. And thousands have accepted Islam because of him. And tens of thousands have accepted Islam from his student, who's on the next page, which is Dr. Zakir Naik here on the bottom. This guy, mashallah, almost has photographic memory, maybe he does. He seems to have memorized the entire Bible as well as the Quran, and seems to know a huge amount of hadith from memory. He even memorizes the exact hadith number and the chapter number of an ayah and the exact ayah number of an ayah whenever he's speaking. So it's very inspirational to listen to. And Hamza Tsortsis, for those who want to learn more about debating atheists, he is the co-founder of Sapiens Institute, one of the main founders of IERA, and he is a Greek convert living in the UK. And so he's very good at proving to people philosophically why Islam is true. So he's very good with dealing with atheists. Bilal Phillips has some amazing classical books, which I've used some of these resources from his publications to make this course. Amazing books on proving to people with evidence from the Quran and the Bible and logic why Islam is true. So Bilal Phillips, a lot of online resources and videos, and a lot of amazing free books. And Muhammad Hijab, kind of like Hamza Tsortsis, deals with a lot of modern day issues, like dealing with atheism, but also deals with a lot of deviant sects that emerged from Islam and how to disprove any deviant groups that are not following the true Quran and Sunnah and the understanding of the Salaf, the early Salaf as-Salih, the early righteous generations of Muslims. So I'm not going to get into the last probably like 4 or 5 slides of this lecture because it has more to do with personal growth, and that's going to take another 5 to 10 minutes. So I think we'll basically stop on the recommendations of du'at that you guys probably want to start checking out on YouTube, maybe bookmarking some of their videos. Don't be surprised if you actually dedicated 20 to 30 hours of your life, that you would be super competent in day-to-day dawah if you studied the works of these famous and amazing du'at. I hope inshallah that was of benefit. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.